Good afternoon and welcome to the Washington Institute. I am Rob Satloff. I am the executive director of the Institute, and it is a great pleasure to welcome all of you to this very special event. I'm delighted today to welcome from Israel, Dr. Mansour Abbas, member of Knesset, chairman of the United Arab List, deputy speaker of the Knesset. This is a very special day since this is not only Dr. Abbas's first appearance before an American audience, but it's also, I believe, the largest online audience we have ever had for a Washington Institute program. First, a word of background. Dr. Abbas, born in 1974, lives in the Galilee. He is married with 3 wonderful children. He studied dentistry while at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem and is a dentist by profession. While at Hebrew University, he was the chairman of the Arab Students Committee, so he was politically active from a young age. I am told he is currently studying at the University of Haifa for a master's degree in political science. Of course, I think he could teach the course all by himself. Now, our guest made headlines earlier last year when he led his party into Israel's governing coalition. Indeed, his support is the glue that made this coalition possible, thereby writing a new chapter in Israel's history. Since then, he has continued to make headlines as a pillar of the government and as a responsible leader on the national stage. Before I turn the microphone over to our guest, just a few words of organization. Dr. Abbas will make his remarks in Hebrew, and then he will take questions from my colleague, David Makovsky, our Ziegler Distinguished Fellow and Director of the Institute's Koret program on Arab-Israeli relations. At this point, you have to make a choice in terms of interpretation. So please look at the bottom of your Zoom bar where it says interpretation and select your language, either to listen to our program in Hebrew or in English. This will allow you to hear the simultaneous translation during our event. If you don't pick Hebrew or English, you will hear the original audio that is spoken, which will be a combination of both languages. If you pick Hebrew, you will hear in Hebrew. If you pick English, you will hear it all in English. With that, it is a great honor and privilege to turn the microphone over to our guest.
Thank you, Robert. I am very grateful for you and to Mr. Ehud Yaari for having arranged this. And I'm happy to be here, and I look forward to having this conversation together. I hope it will be a fruitful conversation, and I hope you will get to know what we do in the Holy Land. We have many miracles here that we try to accomplish. We try to create a new future, a new present, in which we will be able to overcome difficulties and challenges, and so we may go forward. And in this optimistic vein, I will start speaking. I will say some words about my involvement in this political process that we are doing, that we are following, and about who we are and what our goals are, what difficulties we are encountering. And of course, the most important part is, of course, if you have questions, feel free to do so at the opportunity. So my name is Mansour. I was born in 1974 in a very special village the village of Mughar, which is very close to Tiberias, and to Safad in Galilee, in the eastern Galilee. This is a mixed village. Religiously, there are Muslims. I am a Muslim. We are a minority in this village. There are Christians, and of course, the majority are Druze. And around us, there are Jewish villages. And of course, since the beginning, I have got to know everybody, and I have tried to develop a language, a common language with the other. And religiously, I am a believing man, and I do whatever I can to live up to my commandments, the commandments of Islam. And I believe that this religion gives me strength and faith to connect with people, to wish for the best of all of humanity, and it provides me with values, human values, humanitarian, that are taken, that will help me connect with people who are other challenges and conflicts and who suffer from situations of hostilities. And I can say that I have come from a place where I see things in many colors, and not only in two colors, the way many politicians speak. There is a group that is Jewish and there's a group that is Arab, but I come from a place where I can look at the entire society. I can talk about Israel and its citizens, all its citizens, and there is a great variety between the various groups, also Jews, also Arabs, in religious sense, in a political sense, in an ideological sense, in a social sense, and therefore the colors for me are varied. And when I want to talk about a certain phenomenon, I can show I can show this as it appears in all the groups. For instance, if we talk about racism, for instance, then it is not only in one dimension between A and B, but it also exists between various groups, and it sometimes changes. It depends on who has the power, who has the resources, who has the abilities, and this expresses itself in a small village, but also at the level of a city, inside the various groups in the Israeli society. Jewish, Oriental Jews, Ashkenazi Jews, Sephardic Jews, religious Jews, secular Jews, everything. And therefore, this perspective always connects me to this humanitarian, humanistic approach. So if we succeed to solve one problem, for instance, between Jews and Arabs, then this will have implications on the entire Israeli society, also among Arabs and also among Jews. And therefore, our approach says that if we succeed in establishing a cooperation, a political cooperation, and also a social cooperation, partnership around two basic principles. One is the one of citizenship, because ultimately what connects all the people inside the state of Israel is their citizenship. So if we take this element, which is common, and it is based on a system of laws and on a mutual relationship between the state and its citizens and among the citizens, then we can expand this partnership, this civil partnership, to more dimensions. This helps us to overcome divisions and conflicts in various different levels, on the national level, the religious level, the party level, etc., etc. On the other hand, we cannot only rely on this civil component. We also have to develop a more value-based approach to connect to the values of all the groups in the Israeli society all the communities, and to give them the weight that they deserve, so that they, on the one hand, will be able to work together and succeed, not only to address certain issues that are in consensus anyway, but also to overcome conflicts and disputes that require us to address them, and we cannot just ignore them. So there are two systems that are connected here: the civil or civic system and the value-based system, humanist system. And there is the interaction, the national interaction, I will call this, between the groups, religious, community, ideological, party groups. There are two forces here, and these forces connect. And then there are other forces that create tensions and interactions and conflicts around all the resources that we have and the values that we share or don't share. This is by and large it. Now, so far, if we look at the Arab politics inside the state of Israel as citizens, the discourse of the Arab parties has been a discourse of opposition. We have seen ourselves always as an opposition to whatever there is. It doesn't matter who is in government, left or right. We have always seen ourselves in opposition, and we have always said we want to see this partnership, and then we will see how to continue. We want to see the change, and then we will see how we can help our partnership. Now, Raam, my party, says the opposite, the exact opposite. It says actually that it is impossible to proceed towards a change like this only on one side. We say that you cannot expect a change if we are always opposed to each other and never are in touch with each other. If we don't talk to each other in a serious way, if we don't have a serious dialogue, and even if we have this dialogue in a closed panel, that does not have implications on society at large, and then this discourse is often comes to an end when each side thinks that they're right, and therefore no further joint initiative is developed. Now, Raam is coming today and says that despite these disputes, that many of them are very difficult, we, first of all, want to create a partnership and to address the points of contention within this partnership. And this allows us, on the one hand, to prepare yourself to have relationships with the people that you are in disagreement with, and this partnership creates an interest on both sides to address a certain point of contention. The first assumption should not be that you're right, but that you want to reach to a compromise, to a solution for a problem. I will give an example now. We are really at the beginning of this partnership, and the citizenship law, which we think is a very difficult law. It hurts basic rights that Arab society has. It means that I, as an Israeli citizen, but also as a Palestinian Arab, cannot marry with an Arab Palestinian from the West Bank. And that is very difficult. But as soon as we have addressed this inside our partnership, and almost every side got what they wanted, we made sure that the families and there are 10,000 families like this, will get rights, that their issues will be addressed. And on the other hand, and on the other side, the parties that support this law got it through, they passed it. It is not an ideal situation, because our ideal situation would be that there would be peace in the region, in this Holy Land, and then we would be able to have relationships between all the groups. But so far we are at a transitional stage where we come out of a situation that is not desirable to a desirable situation, and this requires us to enter into compromises. And usually when a more successful compromise is when it is done together. So the approach, I am going farther, and despite this, I want to sit with you, and we will work together. And in the course of this, we will create between the different parties, and also we create trust between the citizens and in the various groups, and also between the various groups and the state and the Arab minority and the institutions.
This is a basic way for us to succeed with everything that we are trying to do. We have to trust and work in a partnership and look into the future. Another point that I want to make is that in general, people like to run back to the past. Even though you can't go back to the past, you can look at the past, but you can't go back there to make more changes, to come to compromises, to try and heal all the wounds that you have from the past. Our attitude says the past you cannot go back to. You can look at it and learn from it. How not to do the problems that we used to have, but mainly our hope is in the future, that in the future we'd be able to heal the wounds and correct the stereotypes of the people have, and to create a future, a combined future, where we will find our vision. And we have defined our vision in 4 different ways. The first word, peace, which is a universal word, and security, which is a need, a basic necessity of all the groups. Partnership, which is also tells us about the need or the want to be together and to do things together. And the fourth one, which isn't less important than the other ones, is patience. You cannot do the work together and live together without being patient to each other, and to be willing to forgive and to be flexible to the other, and to overcome the pain and problems that we had in the past. That is the base of the ideology that I work, and the politics that we manage is not only politics of interests of give and take and budgets, but behind it is also, this politics is value-based, that is myself as Mansour, as a Muslim, it's based on the values of Islam. And of course, the humane values. And as a Muslim, I can also see in Judaism one of the sources, and I see and I look at Judaism and Christianity as one way of religion. I look at the religion in the way that I see both the value that we have in more than we see in the edicts and such. We have the belief, but we also have the values that connect very well between the 3 religions with humane values, human value, because after all, at the end, we're all people that just want to live on this piece of land based on the vision that I showed. Everybody that will believe in the other and that would want to develop a relationship, a good relationship in the future. And that's why I'm talking about 2 different levels. The first deeper level, I can say philosophically, and when it comes to our value-based system, is our values. And the second level is to manage the politics itself. Even though all the people that don't believe, that say this will never happen, there's no chance for something like this, we are at this time, in a very short time, in my life, in 2 years or so, 4 different we had the ups and downs, but what I thought on the first day, that when I was elected to the Knesset, this is coming to become true. I came to have a partnership and to make a change from within. Difficulties, we have them. And mainly, of course, political difficulties always exist. There's always opposition, there's always a coalition, and people are upset with me now, and with people in power, even though they know that the Israeli political system, especially lately, I said that the first thing that I want to do, the first thing I want to do is have a partnership with the right, which now is the opposition. And it makes sense to do it in that way. But we went through this path. We almost crossed the halfway point, but at the end, I had to decide. And the person that had the best chance to start a coalition and to develop a government, we gave him our partnership, and that was Naftali Bennett, the Prime Minister, and Yair Lapid. Because we didn't want another election. It's not good for the country, it's not good for the citizen, it's not good for all of us. And I'm very happy that we in Raam, which is an Arab political party, we brought to stability, and we touched a lot of very wide swath of political in Israel. I remind you that the left in Israel, especially Meretz, 20 years now, was not part of the government. And that's why this procedure, like I said in one of my sentences, this approach that we are an Arab party and also connected between the edge of the right and the edge of the left in the Jewish section, the right government and Meretz on the left-hand side, of course, in the middle, there are other political parties. That's what I'm trying to say, even though when we talk about budgets and correcting disagreements and budgeting, we see that when we fix something that was wrong, when we come to say, for instance, to the local Arab governments, it changes how the Israeli and the Jewish government changes. You create a more based not only between the Jews and the Arabs, but also within the Jewish Arabic society and Jewish society, because we're not trying to work only for a political agenda, but we operate also based on what we believe in at the end of the day. I don't know if I have more time, David, and continue. I can talk 2 more years about this. I want to give you an opportunity that we'll hear questions and comments, and we can answer them.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mansour. It's wonderful that you joined us today. I have to restrain myself not to talk to you in Hebrew, but I'm told that this will drive the translators crazy changing languages. So maybe let's just start with the government in terms of how do you assess the role of the government? It'll be almost 8 months, I think, in the middle of the month now. How is it done? How would you look at your own performance? What achievement are you most proud of?
Let's start from the end. The thing that I'm most proud of is the process itself, that we were able to create this partnership, that people that I said already, what did we do when it came to budget or resources? It's very important. We brought a lot of budgets to the Arab society, to education, to work, to high tech, and to the farmers, but it's very important that we brought the budgets. Yes, it's unbelievable. but it's also an investment when it comes to Israel, like the Neman said. The place today to invest in is in the Arab society. If you invest a shekel, you'll get it right back because it's a society that wants to develop, and it will it'll help to the Israelis' economy.
ולקדם אותם מבחינה כלכלית וחברתית וחינוך. אבל אני בהחלט גאה
Okay, but I'm very proud that we have been able to create this correction and to create this, to give people hope that people, Jews and Arabs, can trust each other and can create a faith in the best possible level. We can not sit next to each other on the Knesset, and we cannot just shout at each other, but we talk with each other. We how can we? Sorry, the interpreter was. No, we are talking about the new economic program that the government is proposing. It doesn't affect the only Arab part of society. No, it affects the entire society, and therefore, against the background of the doubts that and the suspicions that people have, they are that we will never succeed to pull this off. But now there is an Arab party that has roots in Arab society. We are not just politicians who are connected to roots. No, we are connected to our entire society. We have a religious dimension. That is what distinguishes us, the Islamic society inside Israel. But we also have a dimension of Arab Palestinian nationalism. But we also have the identity of ourselves as citizens that we want to promote and foster, and we cannot always just say, well, we are second-class citizens for this or that reason. We have to, and that we would always complain about the situation. No, we have a more positive approach, a more dynamic approach, which says that there is a citizenship, and we will take that seriously, and we will promote it, improve it, and we will do that not in a hostile way, but in a cooperative way, in a consultative way. And therefore, that's the most important part for me, the most important thing. And we have now, for the first time, as an Arabic party, the chance to be in a coalition. And I'm a new politician. I have done politics my entire life, but not as a... For many years, I didn't want to get involved in this, but I found myself there. There are reasons. And therefore, we don't have the experience of what it means to be a member of a coalition or even of the government. Well, we are not in government, we are in a coalition, and this is a daily thing. It brings responsibilities. We have a coalition discipline, and that means that you cannot vote what you like, but you have to support decisions that you don't like, your coalition partners, and at least you try to get into certain compromises with them. And Arab society is not used to this. I have always said it is easiest just to be a member of the Knesset in the opposition. You come whenever you want, you go whenever you want, you are not committed to anything. You can just be pure. I don't know if this word is translated properly. Purism. This is really something wonderful. This is my ideal. But in politics, there is no such thing. The key word is compromise. As Bonish.
David?
And in those polls, there's actually broad support for you joining the coalition. Some want you to go even further and become a cabinet minister. And so I'm curious, do you think among Israeli Arabs or Israeli Palestinians, or however you define yourself, which is a question in itself, but do you find that the public is ahead of the politicians? And when and how is that going to change?
Okay.
Okay, well, a political leader must lead, and there is no leader who is led, because then he's not a leader, then he is no longer a leader. Then he's a politician, but not a leader. And especially when you come to a situation where you must make changes, where you must make progress. So if you don't have this approach, don't have this ability and this audacity and the ability to take responsibility, and you take a look at the entire system, and you have this willingness to cross the line to the other side and look at things from there, which is not the way you usually look at things, which is actually opposed to that. So if you don't have the ability to do that and to take that role on yourself, to think about how the other side, the other party thinks, then you cannot succeed in this. This is one thing. So therefore, to my great pleasure, we have been able to bring the Arab society in most polls, public opinion polls. There is no less than 60% that support what we are doing. Even people who have not voted for the Raam party and vote for the other party, the joint list, almost 45% of their voters support what we are doing. So that, as far as we're concerned, as far as the Arab public opinion is concerned, well, they are, of course, waiting and seeing what we can do, what we can accomplish, if we will be successful, if we can achieve things. And that's, of course, depends on the other side of the Zionist parties as well. Will they be able to cooperate? Will they give us an opportunity to succeed? So if we will succeed, then I have no doubt that more than 85% of the Arab public in Israel will support us and will push us further in this field.
Let me ask you this. As Rega, topics and people who have questions, feel free to the Q&A, and we'll try to draw on your questions. We want to hear from you, but we got a bunch of topics we want to get to. So look, I saw you gave 2 interviews, one in Arabic and one in Hebrew, where you said Israel was born a Jewish state and it will remain so. And you've been praised by Israeli Jewish leaders for your bravery and your leadership. And I was just wondering, why did you say it when you said it? What did you mean? Was it a statement of fact, or was it a statement of legitimacy?
So,
okay. Yes. Okay. I will address this reality in which there are Jews and Arabs, citizens of Israel, and we work this way. The citizens, the Arab citizens, we do not have an intention to leave this framework, this civic framework. I would even say more than that. This definition, the self-definition of us, is inside the Israeli citizenship. But in order to succeed with that, we must pool all our identities and not ignore one element and impose it on the other and prioritize it over them. I think of myself as an Arab, as a Palestinian, as a Muslim, and as a citizen of the Israeli state. And these identities, the national, religious, they can live together, they can connect each other based on acceptance of the others. And these identities connect with each other, but of course, in a larger envelope, which is the envelope of values and humanism and justice and mutual support and tolerance and acceptance of the other and justice and all that. So on the other hand, of course, there has to be the law, which is the basis for the relationships between the various populations and communities and people, and between them and the state. So that's the basis. And what I was trying to say is that the state of Israel was born as a Jewish state. That was a decision that those who established that state, those were the Palestinians. Those were the Jewish people. The Palestinians didn't do that. So today, there is a majority of Jews in the state of Israel, and they established that identity without consulting us. Now, what am I going to do about this? There is an approach which refuses to accept this and maintains the right to fight against this. We want a state for all its citizens. And I don't exactly know what they mean with that when they say that, when they say they want a state for all its citizens. And on the other hand, there is the approach that says the state of Israel is a state for the Jews. It's a Jewish state. At most, we will give, maybe the most we will succeed is a theoretical equality before the law, but not in practice. So I have a different approach. I am saying I accept the other. I am looking forward to the future, and I am not stuck in the past. And even though in the past we have these narratives, we cannot change this narrative. We want this Israeli Jewish narrative. I want to understand it, and I want to combine it with the Arab Palestinian narrative, combine the two. Because in the world, there have always been wars, for instance, and there's been bloodshed. In Europe, went through the Second World War and went through the First World War, and eventually they got to the conclusion that in order to maintain a society, they have to look forward. And I think that we can live together, because what I'm saying about the I hope to focus on what helps me and what helps the Jews. And what helps me and the Jews is that the identity of this state will incorporate the minority group of Arabs on the national level and on the civic level, without changing this identity. Even when we talk about the national rights of Jews in Israel, what is the ceiling that we can hope for? I have said in the beginning, and I will keep saying this, this general framework is the framework, the civic framework as citizens of Israel, but the status of the Arab language, of the Arab culture, and this is basically gives us legitimization. Sorry, it gives legitimization to the Israeli state, to its ideology, to its self-definition as a Jewish democratic state. But to deny the other, even this legitimization does not imply a denial of the other. The question is, how do you implement this in practice, and how do people live together in such realities? And therefore, I always prefer to see things with a perspective, with an eye on the future. And again, I am looking at this dynamic system. If we create a partnership and trust between the citizens, and this is one of the points that I identify in the discourse, the political discourse in the Jewish Israeli society. There is no doubt that there are many suspicions, and a lot has been written about that, many essays, many opinion pieces. What does Mansour Abbas want? There are people who believe what he says. In one poll, I got 51% of approval, as opposed to Netanyahu. Many people think in Israeli society believe what I say, but they know me, and they know that I have such and such an identity, and there are people who are suspicious, and they think that I am some sort of fifth column or somebody who is trying to undermine the fundaments, not only of the state, but of the Jewish identity of the state. And they try to connect me to all kinds of other groups here and there. And I must say to David here, I do not ignore these suspicions. I do not disregard them, and I do not want to say that I justify them, but I understand them. And it does not have to be automatic that as soon as there is an Arabic leader who says nice things and wonderful things, that everybody would have to believe him. No, that's not how it is. But what I am asking for is, and that's mutual, to give each other a chance, to give the hope a chance to develop, not just on a point-by-point basis in certain periods, certain moments, in certain configurations of the Knesset, but to look at it as a hope, as an opportunity to create something new, something different. And maybe in the next Knesset, even if Raam will not be the linchpin, but there will be somebody else who will create a government. And even though they might have 60 Knesset members and a majority, they would still say it is important that one of my partners in the coalition will be an Arab party. And that is how you can discuss things. And I want to say again in one sentence, I'll try to summarize that. What I tried to say in that interview in Globe's newspaper, I try to say to both Arab and to Jewish society that the real discussion is not about the identity of the state. That exists, that has been accomplished. That's a fact. But the real discussion should be about how within the state of Israel, the definition of it, which in my view, it will not change, but what is the place of the Arab minority inside the state of Israel and inside of Israeli civic identity? That is the question that will decide whether what Israel is going to be like, not whether it will be Jewish, but it will define what kind of Jewish identity the state of Israel will have, because not everybody agrees what kind of Jewish identity Israel will have. And there are people who want a certain humanistic, liberal, open Jewish identity that is accepting and democratic. And there are some who look at Jewish identity and think of it as a nationalistic identity. And that is what it is. Within these definitions, there is room for play, and one can discuss.
Okay, so let me ask you then, just to follow up on this point, to be clear, which is, so is it fair to say you meant it as a historic statement and as a prerequisite for reconciliation between Israeli Jews and Arabs? And what was the response that you received in the Arab community? We know that there was criticism from people in the Joint List, but I'm curious not just of what the other Arab politicians, how they responded, but how the Arab public responded to. And again, how much you meant it to be a historic statement.
David,
everything that I'm trying to do is historical. My role is to show a new way to people on both sides. And I generally reserve this thing about being truthful and being open and honest with people. I'm not trying to please one group or another. And therefore, you will not see here that in a short period of time, he was already successful in getting people angry at what he says, because I'm going to the truth, to my truth. I'm trying to show Jews and Arabs a new way in which they can live together and in which each side will realize itself as a collective and as individuals within this framework that is called State of Israel. And it is our role always to emphasize the rights of the minority, but the majority has rights too, and we have to preserve those too. I believe, that's an absolute belief, that it is possible if we have to maintain both these things,
So let me
civic
then
identity and
turn
values.
to the riots in May and your understanding, why did those riots in May break out? And also the fact that you did something extraordinary in May, where you went to a synagogue and said, we want to help rebuild it. I think that amazed a lot of people in Israel. It was a very bold gesture at a very difficult time for you. So if you could talk to us a little bit about the riots in the joint community, in the mixed communities, that would be very helpful.
Yes, so first of all, what you said is right, but actions, deeds have meaning. They're more than statements. Everybody can make statements, but to do something, to go there where the violence is happening, where the conflict is happening between neighbors, that is the role of politicians, not just to play with words, but to put yourself there in the event and to be there with your body and tell people, stop it. One cannot continue this way. But the most important thing is that we all were astonished by is that, especially in these mixed cities where the Jews and Arabs live together, they are not neighbors as one village next to the other village. I have Jewish neighbors who live in the next over village, or in Tiberias, or in Tfachot. That's good neighborhood. But I'm talking here about neighbors who live in the same building or in the same neighborhood. We're all astonished to see why the violence was strongest in those cities, in those mixed cities. And of course, around, there were events, conflagrations against what was happening in the background in that time. And of course, those events in these mixed cities were one phase or two higher. And everybody was astonished, but nobody did any reckoning about that. How did we get into this situation where there is a direct interface between Jews and Arabs? Why is it there that we failed? And I say we failed, and not they failed, or this side or the other side failed. I say we failed. This government of Israel, that has a general responsibility, has never noticed that there is this situation in these mixed cities, this abyss between the two populations, this neighborhood on one hand, but disconnect on the other hand. And all these plans, these economic plans and social plans that the government supposedly promoted in the past in the Arab society, they forgot 10% of the mixed population in these mixed cities. And of course, the local government also, the municipalities in Jaffa, in Lod, in Haifa, in Accra, they also did not see themselves as responsible. They did not think they had to go to the government, and they did not demand, we are committed to bridging this gap. And therefore, all these events that happened against the background of what was going on in the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem and in Sheikh Jarrah, all this came against the background of relationships that were already bad, tensions, a failure in the providing of services and governance and education that did not live up to the requirements. The weakest part of society, so in social and economic and educational terms, is in these mixed cities. The Arab towns, they have somehow succeeded. There are successes, there are great successes. in the Arab cities, Arab towns, Arab villages, people have professions, but for some reason, nobody noticed for decades that this phenomenon of really poor neighborhoods in Jaffa, for instance, is what is happening. And I wasn't able to be there on time and say, stop, it has been enough. When we had these negotiations, I remember that we got a recommendation from one of our partners, one of the journalists, Ehud Yaari, who told me the best chance for you to deal with the May event is to go forward and to establish a government. It doesn't matter this way or that way, but be a part of it. So yes, I went forward. I didn't give up, and other people gave me up in that time. There are leaders of parties on both sides that would call me and ask, how am I doing? Am I still alive, kicking? Am I holding out? And they were very worried. But what we did, we came to the new government and we said, we want a plan, an economic plan, social, educational plan. We want infrastructure. We want housing in these Arab neighborhoods in the mixed cities. Because again, we say that we can continue talking about the events of May for another 20 years and not do anything. But what matters is how are we getting back? How can we improve the fabric of the relationships in the mixed cities? Because when we fail in our joint interface, where would we succeed? So therefore, that's a challenge for us. You don't need more analysis here and there, as if our job is just to analyze and to think what was going on. No, we have to think about what is going to be, how we can prevent future events. And there is, and a last sentence about this, I know that I'm giving long answers, but there are people who constantly try to look for a guilty party, and I'm not trying to do that. I am not trying to find out who is guilty. I'm trying to find out who can be a partner for us to work together. And we all agree that in many fields we may have disagreements about what to do, but we do know that somebody has to take responsibility and to say, here we are, here we do it.
Okay, if I can take you to now some of the foreign policy issues, which is and in terms of the priorities of the Israeli Arab community, are they asking from you focus first on the economics, bread and butter, and the Palestinian issue second? So what are your views about how much focus? The old approach was almost exclusive focus of Arab parties on the Palestinian issue. Where does that fit into your priority list?
Well, we want there to be peace in the Holy Land between Jews and Arabs, and we want the Palestinian problem to be solved. But I'm saying this in a very open way. We went to the elections with a civic agenda. I approached the Arab citizens of the state of Israel and I told them, I want to address the economic and social and educational and housing problems in the Arab communities. So in democratic terms, what I have been entrusted with, my mandate, is to give this a priority. So let's call this the social things. Even though, of course, one can always divide these things from each other. You can always separate what is civic and what is national or what is whatever. So everything is related and connected, but there is no doubt that we focus on social issues in Arab society, and we have many challenges inside our community. I don't know how many people know that we suffer from lots of crime inside Arab society. there are criminal organizations who take over our life, our economy. They even take over part of the municipalities, the local municipalities in Arab towns. So therefore, you cannot really always just try to change the world when you cannot even preserve and protect your own community, your own life, your own world. And therefore, ethically, I cannot deal with all the problems of the world and forget the local issues that we have and leave them bleeding. So we took this approach, and we still maintain that I carry on my shoulders this responsibility because, on the other hand, I was chosen, I was elected for this because of this agenda. And if I want to have a different agenda, I have to go back to the public that chose me and tell them, I'm picking a different agenda now. If that's okay with you, okay. But if not, then you'll have to decide at the next elections. But there is no doubt that, and that's the complexity of the situation that we're in, we have a very special status. On the one hand, some of the Palestinian people, on the other hand, we are part of the state of Israel, citizens, and we have to balance these two identities. And this special situation that we're in will also provide hope that not only citizens of the state, Jews and Arabs, can live together and develop together and create a partnership and work in peace together and security, but also the two peoples can do that. But in order to, well, the help that we can give to people is in that the civic model that we have, that we will succeed inside the state of Israel. That is what will bring about the hope and will provide faith that it might succeed. And there are people who say that if you're Jewish and you're Arab, you cannot do anything together. But we want to do this together thing. We want to do this in order to be able to say that we can do it. And so that's one side. But on the other hand, David, one last sentence, if I may, if there will be, I mean, the situation is that we cannot disconnect ourselves from the reality that there is in the entire Middle East, not only in the state of Israel or in the Holy Land, but the events that may develop, even if there will be a deterioration of the economic situation, this will have impact on us. And therefore, we will have to make sure that we are immune to this in order to obtain some sort of normalcy and continue. Okay, אז יש לי עוד שאלה אחת אליך, אפילו שיש לי עוד שאלות ש... Sorry.
Yeah, so, sorry about that. So one last point, then I'll turn it over to Rob. The Abraham Accords. Are you for it? What do Israeli Arabs think about it?
הכוונה על הסכמי אברהם.
Are you asking me about the Abraham Accords? Yes. So about that, I have to be honest and open and put the things on the table. At that time, that the Israeli government signed those Abraham Accords and the peace agreement with the Emirates and with Bahrain. At that time, we in our Raam were in a different partnership with all the other Arabic parties, and with the joint list. There are 4 parties in that list: the Communist Party, the National Party Arab, and a half-national party called Ta'al, and we are Raam. And basically, the decision was at the time not to support those agreements, but I aligned myself at that time with them. Like at the time, like now we have coalition, we aligned ourselves with the coalition. At the time we aligned ourselves in this joint Arab list, but I also did say at the time, we cannot just vote against these agreements. My view was not accepted, and our approach that I tried to express at the time against that background was that if you want to make a change, you cannot make that change when you are limited, when you are unable to express the things you believe in. And therefore, certainly, I can say to you today that there was a mistake not to vote for those agreements, and I see them positively. And the relationships that came out of those that are developing now, and we try slowly to find our place in this system. I'm trying to get away from that as much as I can, from this international scene, because that is very complex, and I have a different set of priorities, which is mostly locally focused, but we are trying to find our place in how we can contribute to the tightening of connections and links, and of course, to bring our beliefs to the table. And of course, if there will be new agreements, then we will certainly support them.
I want to thank you very much for your candor on a wide range of issues. There's so many other issues to discuss, but I hope this dialogue that we began, that you will return to the Washington Institute. We're just very grateful for your time and for your thoughts. And I turn it over to Rob Satloff.
So Dr. Mansour, thank you. Before we finish, I have one last question, if you don't mind. We have just spoken, your remarks, your conversation with David for an hour, and we didn't hear the word apartheid. How do you feel when you hear the word apartheid describing the situation between Arabs and Israelis, between Arabs and Jews inside Israel?
Well, I will give a general answer and a specific answer. Let's start with the specific answer, actually. So if you talk about relationships between the state of Israel, I would not call it apartheid. And actually, I am within the coalition, and if I want to be inside the government, I could be in government too. But therefore, my approach, and it brings me back to the general answer, I think not to judge a phenomenon. I prefer to describe a reality in objective ways. For instance, if there is discrimination in a certain field, then we will say that there is discrimination in that specific field, and we try to point at that field of discrimination and to say that there are gaps between Arab students and Jewish students and the budgets that they are allocated. And we know that there are gaps inside Jewish society as well in that respect. Now, to jump from that description, this objective description of things that everybody agrees about them, and even in government reports or in the reports of the state controller or the ombudsman, you will find such descriptions of discrepancies. But everybody will use their own terminology. I usually try not to be judgmental. I'm not trying to say you're racist or the state is racist or this is an apartheid state or not an apartheid state. What I'm saying is my role is as a leader, as a political leader, to try to bridge the gaps and to improve the distortions and to create a better and more just society, not only between Jews and Arabs, but also among Arabs and also among Jews. And again, I'm saying this again, There are people who say that I am so gentle and I'm not saying loudly and not stating clear positions, but my position is that from my neighborhood, from my family, I see all the colors, and so if you want to talk about racism, then let's talk about racism between neighborhoods, between towns, between nations, and see how things change. Sometimes he's a racist, sometimes he's a racist, but that doesn't help us. Is that we have a good analysis of the problems that exist. My basic education is medical, and the first phase is always to provide a good solution that is based on a good diagnosis, and it will not help us to judge. And I said again, I'm not looking for guilty people, I'm looking for partners and for a chance to do it together. And I believe that the relationships between all the people, in the good of people, but if you want to focus on the people who live among us here in this country, Jews and Arabs and Christians and Druze, etc., then I believe that we have a system of values that is very good, and we can use it as a basis for building something better on. But I will also conclude with one sentence, and I tell my friends that, my friends in the leaders in the other coalition parties, I am not proposing to disregard what is being said outside, but what has been published in the Amnesty report or in other reports, the OECD reports, or other international reports, or even local Israeli reports, this is an opportunity for us to look at what is happening, to be introspective, to see what we can fix, what we can change. And this, of course, is on a level, on the intra-Israeli level, but on a broader level of Palestinians and Israelis, etc., I generally take the line of international decisions. They can describe the situation as it exists according to international law. But again, what is true in my view is not to say what is right or not right, but to do whatever is useful. That's how I see myself. And I have this privilege now to, sorry, I do not have this privilege to judge people, but I have a wish, a desire to accomplish this change together with them. I will change, you will change. And it is not that I am the good one, the absolutely good one, and you're the absolutely bad one. Our fate here is to live together, and we can decide how we want to live together. With fights, conflicts, hatred, or with values that I have already offered: peace, security, tolerance. And I think we all inside ourselves know what the answer is.
Dr. Mansour Abbas, thank you very much. It's been a privilege to host you here at the Washington Institute, and I want to wish you all success. And I hope that we can meet in person directly so that we can continue this very important conversation. This is Rob Satloff saying thank you on behalf of my colleague, David Makovsky. Thank you for joining us for this Washington Institute special event. Bye-bye.
This out.